Well, it's been about 5 years since they appeared, but now they are making their next big screen appearance. Hey everyone, it's Dante Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this movie review is going to be for a film that I have, for a newest installment of a film series I am doing a review series on. And it was for another Universal franchise, and it was for an animated one this time. One I've been doing since the start of June, and now reviewing the newest one at the start of July. This one has just come out this weekend, and that film is for none other than the second spin-off of this franchise, the one that was also supposed to come out in 2020 but was delayed 2 whole entire years, all the way to this year. That is none other than Minions: The Rise of Gru, the sequel to 2015's spin-off Minions. But before we get into details, what's the plot of this film? Well, this is set after the first film, and this time now takes place in the 1970s. A 12-year-old Gru is growing up in the suburbs. Fanboy of a team of supervillains known as the Vicious Six, Gru hatches a plan to become evil enough to join them. When the Vicious Six oust their leader, legendary fighter Wild Knuckles, Gru interviews to become the newest member. It does not go well, and things only get worse after Gru steals a precious stone from them with the help of Kevin, Stewart, Bob, Otto, and the other minions, and suddenly finds himself the worst enemy of the apex of evil. On the run, Gru will turn to an unlikely source for guidance, Wild Knuckles himself. Discover that even bad guys need a little help from their friends. So yeah, how was this film made? Well, in January 2017, Universal Pictures and Illumination announced a sequel to their animated film Minions. The film began production in July 2017, with Brad Avildsen added as a co-director, and in May 2019, the film style was revealed as Minions: The Rise of Gru. In December 2019, it was announced that Pierre Coffin and Steve Carell would be reprising their roles as the Minions and Gru, respectively. Production of the film shifted to remote work because of the pandemic, following the temporary closure of Illumination McGuff. Minions: The Rise of Gru debuted at the 80th International Animation Film Festival on June 13, 2022, and has been theatrically released just today in the United States on July 1st, 2022 by Universal Pictures. Like I said, it was meant to be released in 2020, but the film kept on suffering delays all the way to this year because Illumination, they're greedy. They just cared about the money. Even like 2021, like they could have just stuck with their 2021 release or something like that. No, they wanted that billions so bad because Minions made $1 billion when it first came out. But how have the reviews for this movie been? So far, this film has received better reviews than the last two entries in this franchise. Now, as for my reaction, I was not hyped for this film when I saw the trailers, because one, I did not like the first Minions film. I think that's the worst Illumination movie ever, and the worst film in the Despicable Me franchise. Just did not work for me. And then Despicable Me 3 I thought was an unneeded cash grab, so I was losing my interest in Despicable Me because of the last two other films I had to sit through. So, and I predicted this one was just going to be a cash grab disappointment. Well, but now, I saw the movie last night, a Thursday night preview of it. As for my reaction, well, I gotta say, I'm a little surprised. Like, This film was not as terrible as I thought it was going to be. In fact, it was actually kind of decent. I think it's probably the most, kind of somewhat the most fun I've had watching a Despicable Me film since the first two films. Granted, this film's not as great as 1 or 2 per se, but however, I will admit, definitely still better than the first Minions film from 2015 and the Cash Grab DM3. And we're getting a Cash Grab DM4 in 2 years, guys. I was thinking it was just going to be one of those just there for money movies, kind of like the Minions movie 2015, but this movie actually felt like a good 1970s experience. I mean, it does have still has some bad moments. It's not perfect by any means, but it's better than what we have gotten from this franchise in like a while. And yeah, while I still was not hyped for this movie, I started regaining a little bit of hope and illumination after last year's Sing 2 and proved to be better than I anticipated. So I maybe had a bit of hope after that, not too much for this film, and I feel like this is what we should have gotten either in 2015 or in 2017. Remember those two other films? We should not have had those previous two films. Instead, after Despicable Me 2, I feel like this is what we should have had afterwards. And plus, like, if you think you need to watch the first one before this, then no, you don't, actually. You don't actually need to watch the first film. You can actually just skip the first film and just go to this and you're not going to miss a thing. They don't even mention any of the events of the first film. Well, the only really thing that gets mentioned for the first minutes is just them moving in with Gru. Nothing else. At all. So yeah. I feel like this should have been from 2015. This would have worked way better. It's a fun watch, like, nothing, like, and those who think, like, when you hear me say I was not excited for this, you're probably like, you probably just hate kid movies of today. You hate the modern kid movies. No. Granted, a lot of modern kid films suck these days, but I've still liked a few of them. I liked Ryan the Last Dragon. I liked Soul. I liked Luca. I liked Mitchell's vs. the Machines. I liked the Lego Movie. I liked this most recent DreamWorks film, The Bad Guys. I still like quite a few modern kids films that actually don't try to be all cringy all the time and actually try to do stories right. But back to this. It's a fun watch, nothing to go crazy over about. The story's a little messy, some twisted turns added which kind of felt unnecessary. There are some interesting characters, with the familiar ones reappearing as their younger versions. There's thankfully no mention of Gru's brother, which is a good thing because I did not like Drew in the last film, so I'm glad he was not mentioned. The only characters that may come back like cameos are just characters from the first two movies. Like, this spinoff does not even acknowledge 3 yet. They only acknowledge those first 2. But like I said before, I'm going to start with the nitpicks, because there were still some nitpicks I have with this. The story is really messy because of the many events and characters that appear in the film. At one point, there's even 3 different storylines intertwined, which is common with a lot of Illumination sequels. This only makes the film more difficult to follow for both young and old. Some young viewers may lose interest in the film because of this, but for adult viewers, there's some nice references in the film that link back to the 1970s in terms of clothes people wore, what hairstyles they had, and what music they listened to. And the rest of the film appears to be more intended for children, for adults, though, it kind of feels a little more illogical and predictable. But the film is somewhat repeatedly compared to the previous films in the film series. The comedy level is also more aimed at kids with lots of the typical fart jokes in the franchise, and just like it was in the first Minions movie, the film is also somewhat repetitive in this area, but for a more entertaining family movie, you better watch it. The animation of the film does look good and recognizable again, but nothing special or new is done here. Only some of the new villains have a nice animation form, but most of them you don't get to see or really learn who they are. Had they chosen fewer new characters, some of the stronger ones could have emerged in this film. But however, like I said before, this was still way better than the other 2 movies that were before this, because there was still a lot of good stuff I had with this film. Like, this movie provides the backstory for how Gru came to the notorious villain he is today, and I really like what they did here. Like, the movie's called Minions Rise of Gru. Well, guess what, guys? The minions actually, believe it or not, are not the main focus of this movie. Actually, most of the entire focus is actually on Gru as a kid. So, for those of you that are not a fan of the minions, that should be a good relief for you. The minions are not the main focus of this film, and they still do get a lot of scenes, but I feel like they were handled much better here than they've been handled currently. Like, it feels like the minions we actually loved in those first two movies, and they were handled right. And the character I think I liked most was Alan Arkin's character, Wild Knuckles, and Knuckles was actually a pretty decent character. Although I kind of wish instead of Wild Knuckles, his character should have been Dr. Nefario. Now, Dr. Nefario does make an appearance in this movie, like just in like two scenes though. But these two scenes do show how he met Gru. I'm gonna get to that part in a little bit though. But of course, the three main minions from that last installment or last spin-off, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob, they each have unique character traits that kind of make these films work. Like, you can see in this movie, you can see how each minion plays a different role and how Gru grows as a villain as a person. Like, Kevin is a smart, responsible leader. Stuart's the one who's always in touch with reality. Bob is a lighthearted, innocent soul. Well, yeah, like, there are many subtle references to the previous movies too that add to the comedic tone as well. Like, for instance, in the scene where Gru and Wild Knuckles attempt to rob the bank, and guess what? The bank they're robbing is actually the same bank of evil from the first Despicable Me film. And guess who actually does make a comeback in one scene? Yeah, Mr. Perkins actually makes a comeback, and yeah, even his own voice actor Will Arnett even plays a even actually voices him in this cameo, and he shows him an image of his grandson, aka Vector, like kind of foreshadowing the whole first film and stuff. So it was nice to see that. It was nice to see that good little throwback of that picture of him and Vector from that first film. So, but of course, we all know since this is a prequel, young Gru's not aware that Vector's going to play a bigger role in the future. But the audience, all of us, definitely know. These subtle references and even what contributes to the nostalgic feel we get from watching the film. And of course, like, we can't forget about Gru's iconic wardrobe, which he's already wearing as a young kid. And if you expect something with a heartfelt, deep story moral lesson, well, I probably wouldn't watch this movie because Rise of Gru is a comedy movie with the sole purpose of keeping kids entertained for 90 minutes, and it fulfills that purpose perfectly. Anything beyond that is kind of a bonus, like. And also, despite being a comedy movie aimed at children, there's actually kind of some dark scenes in this. And the humor also can be kind of aimed at adults if you think about it. So it's still far from being a snooze fest for adults. And it has a pretty good message here, too. And this movie has a pretty good message. Like, basically the moral of this movie is that everyone kind of needs a little help sometimes. Even though he doesn't realize it right away, Gru eventually recognizes that he needs help from his minions in order to be the successful villain he desires to be. Now, you're probably all wondering, so Don G. Corleone, how does Gru meet Dr. Nefario in this? Well, when he's about to meet the villainous Six, or he's looking for the room he's supposed to be waiting for them in, he happens to stumble across the clerk or fake shop owner that actually is Dr. Nefario, who gives him his very first gadgets, and then that's like the first scene he's in. At first I think that was just going to be the only cameo he's in, but however, if you go see this movie, guys, do stick for the credits, because the mid-credit scene really shows how he fully got recruited to be his weapons maker. So, around the credits, since he gave Gru his first weapon, Gru decides to recruit him to be his assistant that we would know in those first two movies. At first he's kind of reluctant, but then the minions kind of form these little sad faces they kind of show throughout the film, and then Nefario decides to just join them anyway, and then he actually does show them, of course you guessed it, yep, the iconic ship Gru has in the franchise, pretty much kickstarting their career working together. So yeah. So I really liked how, even though Nefario only had like 2 scenes, I'm glad he came back. I'm glad they actually showed how he met him, something like that. But although, instead of Alan Arkin's character Wild Knuckles, I kind of wish like maybe I think it would have been slightly better had Wild Knuckles been the Nefario character. It probably would have been actually a pretty cool story there. But I'm glad like Nefario didn't just make a one and done silent cameo, and I'm glad this wasn't just about the minions all the time, and I'm glad they actually focused on Gru in this prequel. So yeah, if you want a better prequel, I'd honestly would go see this, because in the end, I honestly think this would have to be the third best of the series in my personal opinion, and what we honestly should have got in 2015, like either 2015 or instead of Despicable Me 3 in 2017, we should have got this in 2017. This would have worked way better as a third installment. And then, like, because, like, with this film, then Despicable Me 1 and 2, this kind of feels like a complete trilogy right here. However, despite that statement, depending on your guys' opinions, maybe I just wait for streaming just to be safe, because I know some opinions are probably going to be a little different than mine. But anyway, that's it for my review of Minions: Rise of Gru, and if you're wondering how I'm going to rank the Rise of Gru, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you hated what happened in 2015 and want an improved attempt unlike last time, then easily stream this movie, because while not as good as 1 or 2 still, it's still better than the other 2 before this for sure. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Rise of Gru, I'm going to give Rise of Gru a 7 out of 10. And there we go. That's pretty much it for my review of The Rise of Gru, and that's pretty much it for my review of the Despicable Me franchise, so stay tuned in like a few days to see how I rank all 5 of the movies, from worst to best, like I did with Jurassic Park. So yeah, but this was not a bad series I got to review, so yeah, then anyway, I also plan to review Independence Day for 4th of July, but until then, that'll be it for this review. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like and subscribe to Don G. Corleone.